very special guest in the person of His Excellency Dr. Bernd von Münchow-Pohl, German ambassador to Jamaica. Ambassador Münchow-Pohl was born about 65 years ago, and he had his first degree in history and German philosophy. He has his doctorate in philosophy, and he joined the country's foreign ministry in 1986. Apart from serving in various leadership capacities at the German Foreign Ministry in Berlin, His Excellency Ambassador Münchow-Pohl had served in Seoul, Washington, and Warsaw. He was also chargé d'affaires at the German Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica from 1997 to 2001. He was head of the Economic Division at the German Embassy in New Delhi from 2005 to 2008, head of the German Information Center at the German Embassy in Washington from 2008 to 2011. Ambassador Münchow-Pohl was ambassador to Niamey, Niger Republic from 2015 to 2018, and had been German ambassador to Jamaica since 2018 to date. His Excellency Ambassador Münchow-Pohl is married and has 2 grown sons. Excellency, you are most welcome to Diplomatic Point.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador, you have such an incredible exposure in diplomatic service. Can you please share with us what inspired your decision to join the foreign ministry?
Really a long planned decision at all. In many ways, it just sort of happened. I have many colleagues who come from diplomatic families, who are the sons and daughters of diplomats, who grew up traveling the world with their parents and knew what they were getting themselves into, and sort of had this on their long-term career plan for themselves. I'm none of those. I just came to this rather late when I was doing my doctorate, and because my professor had connections to the German Foreign Office, and he was giving a presentation to the young diplomats in training, and I had a meeting with him at some point about my work, and he just mentioned this, and he said, Mr. von Münchow-Pohl, I think this could be something for you. Have you ever thought about that? And of course I had not. I had thought about an academic career as a professor, or maybe becoming a journalist. But then I also applied to just check it out for the German Foreign Service, and I got accepted, and here I am.
Fantastic, fantastic. So it was not part of your plan.
No, it was not part of my plan.
So you just came up and you took advantage of it.
Exactly.
And eventually got a job.
Yes.
With your country's foreign service. With that, Excellency, can you please share with us the basic requirements for joining the German Foreign Service?
The German Foreign Service is probably the only part of the ministerial bureaucracy in Germany that do not require a particular study profile. Most other ministries, they want the lawyers, economists exclusively, whereas our system is a little bit like the US system. Just you have to have, the minimum requirement is a master's degree when you want to go for the higher service. Not really administrative career, a master's, but it doesn't matter what kind of a master's. Which means I have colleagues, I have anything you can imagine. I have colleagues who are psychologists, medical doctors, theologians, chemists, biologists, anything under the sun. I'm a historian primarily, so that's how I got into it. And you have to have a master's degree, you have to have some language knowledge, Usually they ask you for 2 languages, English being one of them, one of the 2, and they have some, and they like to see if they have some prior work experience possibly, but these are the basic requirements. And then it's a competitive test with interviews, etc., and all sorts of things.
Considering the fact that people are brought in from different educational background, it does mean that there will be a training, kind of training,
Yes.
foreign service training.
Yes, there is a training.
Yeah.
There is a training. We have a training actually for all career levels, not just talking about the higher services, so also have academic degrees, but also for the administrative and more clerical career. For all of those, they have training. The length of training varies. For the higher service, in my days, it was two full years. Now it's, I think, cut down to a year or even less, because they had to squeeze in more, and they try to get them through the system quicker. And most of the training is then on the job anyway. But there are certain basic tools which you are, supposed to learn before you're let loose on the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Excellency. And as an experienced diplomat, what do you consider to be the most important attributes of a diplomat?
This is a very difficult question. I'm sure all the people you have interviewed so far gave you completely different answers to this one. So I would say, maybe it's probably more than one. One thing that I believe is very important is the ability to adapt. And that means adaptation in many ways. You just have to look at where this job will take you, but you have to adapt to different cultures, to different political environments you work in. You have to adapt also things like climate, and our living conditions can be quite different. You have to adapt also to the matter of the work. You will not always be doing the same thing. You will be doing quite different things at different posts. So to adapt and be able to adapt quickly is one, in my opinion, one very important quality. It's something you really need to learn, need to grasp quickly. The other thing is you kind of synergize all your experiences. So, and that's something that I also consider key. For anything you will have done in your diplomatic career, you will find a specialist, someone in the world who knows that thing better than you. But your value add comes that you bring all these different things in professional life together, and you can draw on all of this experience. That gives, I find that very important, especially if you have to maneuver in new situations. Other important, I think, that still is valid today, in spite of social media, Twitter, and what have you, you have to be able to know what you can say and what you cannot say. You have to be able to be discreet and control your communication.
Thank you, Mr. That brings me to the question of the posting circle in the German Foreign Service.
Yeah.
How does it look like?
Yeah, that's, I'm not too sure if there is one. Or if there is one, and it's always subject to change. I'll give you an example. When I joined the Foreign Service, we were told in my career track, well, the basic model is 2 turns out, 1 turn in. 2 turns on posting abroad, 1 turn in headquarters. Unfortunately, for my younger colleagues, I don't think this any longer holds true. In the higher service, it now looks more like 1 in, 1 out, which is not really what you joined the service for, but that's how it has developed. We still follow the generalist principle by and large, that means everybody's supposed to do everything, which does not always mean that you get to do everything. Of course, some people develop a certain specialty and they may become regional specialists and will spend more time in a certain area of the globe than in others. But then you have you have also people, who study Chinese and brought this into the service who were never posted in China in the whole career, So that also exists, unfortunately. I would say there's a tendency that spend more time in everything than in my days.
From your diplomatic information that I had, your first experience was to Seoul,
Yes.
South Korea.
Yes.
How was the experience?
Well, this was actually very interesting because that was also something I absolutely did not have on my radar. We were just told, again, these were different times, we were just told where we would go. And depending what you got, if you were happy or you were not. I think I had applied for African postings, but they said you're going to Seoul. It was only a half a year kind of a posting, but it was great because it was during the Olympics, and my job was basically I was add-on for the embassy during the Olympics to deal with all the VIP visitors we would get and act as a liaison with the athletic teams coming from Germany, etc. It was fascinating. I had a passport too for the whole Olympic Games. I could go to any event. Just had to make sure there was some VIP who wanted to see that event, so I could go with them. It was really marvelous. It was a very good and strong experience.
Excellency, what do you consider to be the key things to note when traveling to a new country, taking into consideration your very first experience to Seoul?
I think, you have to prepare yourself. You have to prepare yourself in many different ways. You got to read. Understand what's the history, what is the culture, what's the political system of wherever you're going. You also have to prepare yourself in other ways. What's the climate like? What kind of clothes plenty? What the health situation? What shots do I need? And depending where you go, you might wind up getting a lot of shots, as you know. So preparation. So, mentally and physically.
Thank you, Excellency. And you joined this foreign service in the 80s.
Yes.
Can you compare the policy of the 80s with this century?
That's very interesting, actually. It's a very interesting question. Because if I look at this today, I think really the environment in which we conduct diplomacy, if you want to call it that way, has really greatly changed. It has become much more open. And in the 80s, basically, you dealt with state government actors. It was government to government, multilateral, whatever. But today, as you know, we speak of stakeholders, and they've become very important. If you go to the annual meeting of the Seabird Authority here in Kingston, maybe twice a year, you don't only see the state parties represented, but you have all these important NGOs and organizations. They might have only observer status, but they have speaking rights. And their voices are very important because they do have the attention of the public. And they might have better connection to the media than you and I to get their points transported. So it's a much more multifaceted environment in which we operate. And with the advent of social media, that's also part of it. You have to think so much more about the publicity side of it, how this is portrayed, what you do. Anything you do which doesn't get covered does not exist. basically, you know.
Yes. Thank you, Your Excellency. And I understand that, from my little experience as a young diplomat, I know that we have so many non-state actors that are very active now.
Oh yes.
In international discussions that affects humanity, and they are playing critical roles, just like state actors. And I could see that from your explanation, what we have today is different from what you had in the 80s and probably in the 90s. You've been to so many countries, Your Excellency, and we would like to know, we want you to share with us some of the memorable moments that you have from some of these countries.
Yes. Of course, you have some memories might be sort of more of a private or of a touristical, if you will, quality. But of course, you had certain work experience that just stuck in your mind. Were very important at the time, something that happened while you were doing this. I can think of, I'll give you two examples that are really sort of stuck big in my mind. I was in Washington, I was twice in Washington. I was in Washington the first time the German reunification happened. When the wall came down and then when the country got reunited. And as you might recall, the war coming down was totally out of the blue. Nobody saw it coming. I did, I certainly did not see it coming. So we were then in the embassy in Washington and the whole story broke. And it was very soon clear that this was something that could not be stopped, that would just continue to happen. And in the US, the reaction to this happening, maybe more so than in Europe, was extremely positive. I'm not just talking about politicians, but I'm talking about the general public. So all of a sudden, this thing is happening, and we get this wave of sympathy. And all people are interested, and everybody is calling us. And I was a young press officer. So we got from one day to the other, we got media attention. Could have never dreamed in our life. So we had 3 people at the press section. My boss was a rather senior diplomat. And we just shared the job, said, okay. My boss, he only did national TV, like NBC, CBN, CBS, CNN, etc. The number 2 was senior to me. He did all the regional local TV, and I did all the radio. So, there I was, young man, second job abroad, in my office, and all of a sudden, as I closed the door, put aside, please don't interrupt, I'm on air. And I got this call, I don't know, for some local radio station that's in Ohio. People want to know and I told them I used to live right next to the wall in Berlin, and it was great because people were so sympathetic and they were interested in what's happening. That was a wonderful experience for me, certainly. I can share another experience that in a way, maybe it's typical or not typical for diplomatic life. On my previous posting, I was an ambassador to Niger, Western Africa. And for most Germans, most ordinary Germans probably have no idea where Niger is. They probably think there's somebody misspelled Nigeria, we had a mission there actually since independence in the 60s, But, it was always a backwater with a little bit of development assistance and nothing much happening. So it was a very small posting. And then all of a sudden, in 2015, this migration crisis in Europe started. And all of a sudden we got this constant attention from media, from politics. But we were still a very small mission, just a handful of people. So we start getting the first visitors. And then from that 1 week warning time, I get a call that Angela Merkel is coming. You know, so she also wanted to see for herself. So we got, you know, we went through all of this, the preparations. They came in a whole big Airbus, not a little one, a big Airbus full of people. And to receive them at the airport, we were like 6 or 7 people, you know, including myself. And I remember, I will never forget, and you know, it was just, you know, we had got the hotel, it was all of that. And this big Airbus coming, and I look at coming in on the tarmac, and I look at my, you know, my tiny crew. Said, oh, this is going to be hard. But it went all very well, and it was a good memory, and it was a very successful visit. But it was just this moment, you know, I said, are we up for this? You know?
Yeah. Thanks, sir. Those experiences are work-related.
Yes.
Do you have anything to share with us in terms of social, you know, your social experience, you know, life in either Seoul or New Delhi or Washington?
Yeah, and I mean, I always, I can really say I was basically very happy with every posting I had. Even though they're very different, I had absolutely no regrets. I had good friends from the country wherever I was, and when I was working in India, I tried to travel as much as I can, because it's just a fascinating country. It's more like a continent. And everywhere I was, I traveled a lot and tried to see as much as I possibly can, and you know, do some of the local stuff. You know, get out of these professional diplomatic circles and just to dive into the culture. You know, I cannot point out any particular event that's that, because I really try to do this everywhere I've been. And yeah.
Thanks. You were CDA in Jamaica from 1997 to 2001, and now ambassador. What can you say about your experience on these two positions?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody asks me that. Even Andrew Holmes asked me that when I told him what I was doing before. How I find the differences. Of course, I mean, for me personally, then I was a number 2. Now I'm the boss. Of course, that gives you a different outlook on the work. Other than that, I mean, the base of the work hasn't changed that much. I moved one office over, you know, but Nemesis is still doing the same thing. I think it's more interesting if you look at how Jamaica has evolved. And that was interesting because some things have changed, I would say positively. And some of the things are pretty much still the same. You know, because it's, I think that's a particularity among insular countries and smaller countries. Maybe they're more inward looking, a little slower, you know, to change, which I personally like. You see, of course, you can see all the development that has taken, the construction, the infrastructure. There's a lot of progress, a lot of things that weren't there 20 years ago. But I reconnected with some of my old friends from 20 years ago. They're still there. They're still my friends. We still do stuff together, which is nice. We had, you know, when 20 years ago our children were together, maybe in kindergarten, or, you know, in preschool. All the kids out of the house, but they're still my friends.
We were here in 1997.
1997
to 2001, and you are now here. You probably will have some Jamaica cuisines that you at least like very much.
Yes.
What are you?
Well, number one, I really like rum. I really like Jamaican rum.
Well,
It's really always has been my drink of choice, and it didn't take me very long to reconnect with it. Of course, there's so many things to see. I still try to go to places I haven't been before. I've been to most places, but not to all. And the thing is, while you're here, you have to make the most of it and see as much of the country as you can. It's a beautiful country. It's unlike other Caribbean countries who are basically a beach with a capital. Jamaica, I would say Jamaica's a real country. It has mountains, beaches, and forests, and everything. So it's very different, very versatile. And it's really. The other day, I was up in the mountains with some friends in an area I've never been before, and I just didn't know. It's beautiful. So there's still things to discover, even after all these years.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And Jamaica is known as a country of music.
Yes.
And that's all.
Right.
Who's the best Jamaican musician?
Who is the best?
That in your own opinion.
I mean, in my mind, of course, maybe it's a generational thing. I will always put Bob Marley first. I'm sure everybody does, but I can say that I play music myself. I play bass guitar, and we covered a lot of Bob Marley songs.
Yeah.
So I like that, and I think that's classical reggae from the old school. Bob Marley is great.
Excellency, I just want to have one final question.
Yes.
And it has to do with the family.
Mm-hmm.
With your experience, Your Excellency, what advice will you give to upcoming diplomats in terms of how to manage their family life as they transit from one country to another?
Well, I think the most important part for anybody who joins the Foreign Service is if he or she has already a partner, they need to have a very serious discussion with their partners if they are willing to accompany them on this life. Because it does take. It's still in this day and age. It demands a lot from the families. Of course, you cannot ask any children who are not born yet, but if you're married, if you're engaged, or you have somebody who you want to ask to come along, that person must know what he or she is getting himself into, and then it has to be an informed decision. It's very important because in some countries it's easy. In some countries it's very hard. And in this day and age, most people work, and you the partners and spouses cannot always work in the countries you're closer to, and that might be a problem. So that needs to be addressed before you go. And I think most services now tend to concentrate also on preparing the family members, also in some support services, which is a very good development. But it has to be an informed decision from the get-go.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for sharing your wealth of experience with us. And I want to say that we have learned so much, and I want to wish you a very successful tour of duty in Jamaica.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency.